5%. That is the entire portion of the universe that you are able to see, touch, or measure. Everything you have ever known lives inside that 5%. Every star you have ever counted, every world our instruments have found, every atom in your own body, all of it fits inside a sliver so thin that the people who study the cosmos for a living have started calling the rest of reality the dark universe, because they have no better name for it. The other 95% is there. We know it is there. We can feel it pulling on galaxies, bending light around what looks like empty space, holding the entire structure of the heavens together with a grip we can measure but cannot explain. Physicists call it dark matter and dark energy. What those words really mean is that almost the whole of creation is hidden from us, and the small part we call the real world is the exception rather than the rule. That is the strangest discovery of modern science, and it is only about 100 years old. But there is a text far older than any telescope, a text that was pulled out of the Bible and buried for centuries, that opens by telling a man he is about to be shown two creations, one that people live inside, and one that they were never meant to see. The man's name was Enoch, and the more carefully you read what he wrote, the harder it becomes to explain how he knew. And before we go further, I need to pause for a second, because what I'm about to tell you gets significantly darker, and I realized a while ago that some of this cannot be fully explained in a video format. The complete reconstruction of the unseen creation, the Book of Enoch, was removed for describing the storehouses of the hidden world laid out region by region, the sealed places the text says were never meant for human eyes, and the exact wording later church authorities used when they marked the book as too dangerous to keep. I put it all into a written document. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now let's continue. To understand why Enoch matters here, you first have to sit with what the science actually found. For most of human history, we assumed that what we could see was what existed. The sky was full of light, and the darkness between the lights was simply empty. The absence of things. That assumption held for thousands of years, right up until a Swiss astronomer named Fritz Zwicky began measuring how galaxies move. In the 1930s, Zwicky studied a distant cluster of galaxies and found something that should not have been possible. The galaxies were moving so fast that they ought to have flown apart and scattered across the void. The visible matter inside them, all the stars and gas he could account for, did not have anywhere near enough gravity to hold the cluster together. Something unseen was doing the holding. Something with mass, with pull, with real physical presence, that gave off no light at all. He called it dunkel materia, dark matter. For decades, most astronomers ignored him. Then, in the 1970s, an American astronomer named Vera Rubin measured the way individual galaxies spin. She found the same impossible pattern everywhere she looked. The outer edges of galaxies were turning at speeds that should have torn them to pieces, unless every one of them was wrapped inside an enormous invisible halo of matter that no telescope could detect. The evidence stopped being a curiosity. It became a crisis. Today, the numbers are settled, and they are humbling. Ordinary matter, the kind that makes stars and planets and people, accounts for roughly 5% of everything that exists. Dark matter makes up about 27%. And the rest, close to 68%, is something even stranger called dark energy, a force that is pushing the entire universe apart faster and faster with every passing year. Add the hidden pieces together, and you arrive at the sentence that should stop you cold. About 95% of reality is invisible to us, and we do not know what it is. Ask a physicist why we cannot see the missing 95%, and the answer is stranger than most people expect. Dark matter does not glow, but that is not the deepest problem. The deeper problem is that it does not appear to interact with light at all. Light passes straight through it as if it were not there. It does not reflect it, does not absorb it, does not shine. Whole rivers of this material may be streaming through your body and through the walls around you at this very moment, and you would never feel a thing, because it simply refuses to touch the part of reality your senses were built to detect. It shares our space without sharing our world. That is not a poetic flourish. That is the working scientific picture. Sit with the shape of that claim for a moment, not the details. The shape, the world we call real, the world of light and matter and everything we can name, is a thin, bright film stretched across something vast and dark that we cannot see and can barely weigh. The seen is small, the unseen is almost everything. And the unseen is not nothing. It has structure, it has force, it reaches into the visible world and holds it in place. There's even a way to watch the invisible reveal itself. And it is one of the eeriest sights in all of astronomy. When light from a faraway galaxy travels toward us, it can pass through a region where dark matter is concentrated, and the gravity of that unseen mass bends the light like a lens. We see the distant galaxy smeared into arcs and rings, warped by something that sits directly in the path and yet gives off nothing at all. We are, in a real and literal sense, looking at the shadow of the unseen falling across the scene. The dark part of the universe leaves its fingerprints on the light of the visible part, and that bending is very nearly the only way we know it is there. Now keep that shape in your mind, because a text written thousands of years before any of this was discovered describes the creation in almost exactly those terms. The Book of Enoch is not a short passage or a stray verse. It is a long and layered work, attributed to the figure the Book of Genesis describes in a single strange line. Genesis says that Enoch walked with God, and then he was not, for God took him. 7 generations after Adam, a man is said to have been carried directly out of the world without dying. The Book of Enoch claims to be the record of what he was shown while he was gone. For the early centuries of the faith, this book was read, quoted, and respected. The letter of Jude in the New Testament quotes it word for word. Early church writers treated it as genuine scripture, and then, over the span of a few hundred years, it disappeared from the Western Bible almost completely. By the time the canon hardened, Enoch had been left on the outside. In most of the Christian world, the book was not simply set aside, it was lost. For more than 1,000 years, Western Europe held no copy of it at all. It survived in one place. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, cut off from Rome and working in the ancient language of Ge'ez, kept the full text alive across the centuries, while the rest of the world forgot it had ever existed. It was only in the 1770s that a Scottish traveler named James Bruce carried 3 copies back to Europe, and the Western world rediscovered a book it had erased. The first complete English translation came later, and the version most people still quote was produced by the scholar Robert Charles in the early 1900s. Then came the confirmation that made it impossible to dismiss. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were uncovered in the caves near Qumran, fragments of Enoch turned up among them, written in Aramaic, older than the birth of Christ. The book was not a medieval forgery or a late invention. It was ancient, genuinely ancient, and it had been circulating in the world of the Bible from the very beginning. The question stopped being whether the text was old. The question became what the text actually says. What it says begins with a journey. Enoch is not simply told about the hidden creation. He is walked through it. Angels take him by the hand and lead him across thresholds, over mountains of fire, past valleys and rivers that belong to no earthly map, out to the boundaries where the foundations of the world are laid. He describes doors set into the far edges of the sky. He describes a great deep and places of confinement, and regions prepared for things that have not yet happened. The book reads less like a vision glimpsed from a distance, and more like a survey filed by someone who was taken to the site and shown around. There is a second, later book that carries Enoch's name, preserved in Old Slavonic, and it pushes the same idea even further. In that account, Enoch is carried upward through a series of heavens stacked one above the next, each one a distinct hidden region with its own inhabitants and its own purpose. He passes the place where the fallen ones are held. He passes the storehouses of the snow and the ice and the terrible cold. He is shown the treasuries where the days and the hours are kept before they are handed out to the world. Layer upon layer of reality, each one invisible from the layer below it, each one real, and the ordinary human world sitting at the very bottom of the stack as the thinnest and smallest floor of the whole structure. And what it says, over and over, is that the world human beings live in is only a small, visible portion of a much larger creation, most of which was deliberately kept out of sight. Enoch describes being carried up and out, past the edge of the ordinary world, and shown regions no living person had ever entered. He is taken to the ends of the heavens. He is shown storehouses, vast hidden chambers that hold the forces of nature before they are ever released into the visible world. Storehouses of the winds, chambers of the hail and the snow and the mist, rooms where the stars are kept and counted and sent out along their paths. In the section scholars call the astronomical book, the whole cosmos is described as a machine of hidden compartments, run by an order that operates completely beyond human view. Some of these chambers are described as places of storage, and some are described as places of holding, and Enoch is careful about the difference. The winds and the waters are kept in storehouses, so that the visible world can be supplied with weather and season on a schedule. But there are other regions, deeper and darker, that are not there to supply anything. They are there to contain. Enoch is shown places at the far end of the creation that hold what must never be allowed, loose, sealed regions built for confinement rather than release. The hidden creation, in other words, has both a supply side and a prison side. Read it plainly and the picture is unmistakable. The visible sky, the part we get to see, is presented as the output of an enormous, unseen apparatus. The wind that touches your face was held in a chamber you will never find. The light of the stars is administered from storehouses that sit outside the world you can reach. What you experience as reality is the surface. The mechanism that produces it is hidden, and the hidden part is far larger than the part you are permitted to see. Before we move on to what Enoch saw beyond the boundary, stop for a second. What you just heard about the hidden creation sitting outside the visible world is the part that changes everything. But it only makes sense when you see it written out next to the original Jez passage, the hidden storehouses, the sealed regions. It's all in the document linked below. Take 5 seconds right now, grab it, and then come back. Because what comes next builds directly on it. The link is in the description. QR code is on your screen. Here is where the text turns from cosmology into something far more unsettling. Because Enoch does not describe the hidden creation as empty, he describes it as inhabited. The most famous section of the book is the account of the Watchers. Enoch tells of a group of powerful beings, angelic in nature, who belonged to that unseen realm and crossed a boundary they were forbidden to cross. 200 of them came down into the visible world. They took human wives. They fathered a race of giants the text calls the Nephilim. And they handed humanity a body of forbidden knowledge, the working of metals and the making of weapons, the cutting of roots, the reading of the stars, the casting of charms and spells. Knowledge that belonged to the hidden world and was never meant to be carried across the line. The text even names them. Their leader is called Semjaza, the one who bound the others to the plan with a shared oath so that none of them could turn back. Another, called Azazel, is singled out as the one who taught men to forge blades and shields and the instruments of war, and taught women the arts of ornament and illusion. Each of the leaders is tied to a specific piece of stolen knowledge, as if the book were keeping a ledger of exactly what leaked across the boundary and precisely who was responsible for it. When judgment is finally pronounced, it is Azazel who is named first, and the command is exact. Bind him, cast him into the darkness, cover him so that he cannot see the light, and leave him there until the day he is thrown into the fire. For this, the text says, they were punished. And the nature of the punishment is the detail that should make you stop. The Watchers were not destroyed, they were bound. Enoch describes them chained and imprisoned in the hidden regions of the creation, sealed away in places beneath and beyond the visible world, held in the dark until a final day of judgment. And when the giants died, the text says their spirits did not leave. They stayed on the earth as unclean spirits, invisible, moving through the world of the living without ever once being seen. There is one image in particular that stays with you. Enoch is led to a place at the far edge of the creation and shown 7 stars, bound together and burning, cast into a pit of fire and confinement. He asks his guide why they are held there, and he is told that these are stars that broke the order of the heavens, that did not come out at their appointed time, and so were sealed away in the hidden dark to wait. Even the lights of the sky, in Enoch's account, can be arrested and locked away in the unseen regions if they step out of their assigned place. The hidden creation is not only a warehouse and a prison for spirits, it is where the very order of the visible sky is kept and enforced. The book then does something most ancient texts never bother to do. It explains where the invisible inhabitants of the world came from. The giants, born from a union that was never meant to occur, were flesh from their mothers and spirit from their fathers. When their bodies were destroyed, the text says, the spirit part could not die with them. Those spirits were left without a home, neither fully of heaven nor able to return to it, and so they remained here, in the air and the hidden places of the earth, unseen and restless. Enoch calls them evil spirits, and says they will afflict and mislead the living until the end of the age. It is, whatever else you make of it, an ancient claim that the world around us is quietly crowded with things we cannot perceive. Strip away the ancient vocabulary for a moment and look only at the structure of the claim. Enoch is describing a reality in which the visible world is surrounded and underlaid by an unseen one, and that unseen one is not a void. It is populated. It contains beings with power, with intent, with the ability to reach into the visible world and act upon it while staying hidden from every human sense. The dark part of creation, in Enoch's account, is where things live. That single idea is what makes the old text so hard to put back down. Enoch's unseen realm is not somewhere far away, out past the last star. It is here, layered into the very same space we occupy, close enough to touch and yet completely beyond reach. The spirits he describes move through the world of the living without disturbing a single thing a human being could ever measure. Read that beside the physicist's description of dark matter streaming silently through solid walls, and the two pictures line up in a way that is genuinely difficult to sit with. Both describe a reality that is right here, all around us, and utterly hidden. Both describe a creation that overlaps our own and does not answer to our senses. This is the part the modern parallel cannot quite shake off. Science tells us that 95% of the universe is made of something we cannot see, something that brushes against the visible world only through the silent pull of gravity, quietly shaping galaxies from the outside. Enoch tells us that the larger part of creation is unseen, that it presses in against our world, and that it is not empty. He is obviously not writing about dark matter the way a physicist would define it, but he arrived at the same fundamental shape thousands of years early, a small visible world, a vast hidden one, and a hidden one that is doing something. Come back to the science for one more moment, because the parallel only deepens. Dark matter, whatever it turns out to be, does not simply sit there. It forms an invisible scaffolding that stretches across the entire universe, a vast web of unseen filaments along which the visible galaxies are strung like drops of water caught on a spider's thread. The bright things we can see did not arrange themselves. They fell into the shape that the dark, unseen structure had already carved out for them. In the language of cosmology, the visible universe is built on the frame of the invisible one. In the language of Enoch, the world we see is administered from the world we do not. Two descriptions separated by thousands of years and by everything we think we know about the gap between myth and measurement, and they are pointing at the same thing. Now let me be clear about what I am and am not saying. Enoch was not a scientist. He had no telescope and no equations, and the storehouses of the winds are not a coded description of dark energy. What we are looking at is not proof of anything. It is a resonance. It is the strange experience of reading a text out of the ancient Near East and finding that its basic model of reality, a thin layer of the seen wrapped around an enormous unseen, matches the conclusion that modern cosmology was dragged toward against its own expectations. The ancients did not measure it. They asserted it, and the assertion turned out to describe the shape of a universe they had no possible way to observe. There is another thread in Enoch that deepens the parallel further. Throughout the book, the hidden creation is described as ordered. Nothing about it is random. Every wind has its chamber. Every star has its appointed path and its measured season. The astronomical book lays out an entire calendar of the heavens, governed by unseen gates, through which the sun and moon are said to pass. A system of hidden portals that regulate the visible sky, with a precision the text insists, is fixed and lawful. The unseen world is not chaos. It is administration. It is the hidden machinery that keeps the visible world running on time. The exact figures in the science did not come from guesswork either. A space telescope was sent up to map the faint afterglow of the universe's beginning, the oldest light there is, and from the pattern of that ancient glow, the whole recipe of the cosmos could be read straight off. Ordinary matter, 5 parts in 100. Dark matter, 27. Dark energy, 68. The measurement has been repeated and refined by different teams, and it holds. We are not guessing that the visible world is a sliver. We have weighed the darkness, and the darkness wins by a margin that is not even close. And this, more than anything, is what the book says was stolen from humanity. The central crime of the Watchers was not only that they crossed down into the visible world, it was that they revealed the secrets of the hidden one. They handed over knowledge that belonged to the machinery behind reality itself. Enoch frames forbidden knowledge as a kind of trespass across the boundary between the seen and the unseen, a leaking of information out of the 95% and into the 5% where it was never supposed to go. And then there is the ending Enoch keeps circling back to. The hidden regions are not sealed forever. The bound things are held only until a day, a specific appointed day, when the boundary between the seen and the unseen is opened, and what was confined is brought out for judgment. The book treats the separation of the two worlds as a temporary arrangement, a wall that holds for now and will not hold always. It is a deeply uncomfortable idea to carry out of an ancient manuscript, because it means the division we quietly depend on, the reassuring gap between what we can see and what we cannot, was never meant to be permanent. It is worth asking why a book like this fell out of the Bible while so much else survived. The honest answer is that no single dramatic moment erased it. Enoch drifted out of the Western canon over centuries, for reasons that were partly about authority and partly about plain discomfort. Its cosmology was strange. Its account of angels breeding with women was difficult to defend. Its picture of a creation full of hidden, inhabited regions did not sit easily beside a simpler and cleaner theology. Whatever the exact reasons, the effect was the same. The one book that describes the unseen creation in the most detail is the one book the Western Church chose to leave outside the wall. And that is the detail that lingers. Of all the texts that could have been cut, the one that vanished was the one that insisted the visible world is only the small part, the one that mapped the hidden regions, the one that named what lives inside them. For more than 1,000 years, the Western world carried a Bible that had quietly removed the single most complete description of the 95% it did not yet know was there. We tend to imagine that ancient people saw a smaller world than we do. A flat earth beneath a low sky, a few thousand stars, everything close and simple. But the Book of Enoch describes the opposite. It describes a creation almost entirely hidden, so much larger than the visible world that the part we live in barely registers against it. And it describes that hidden creation as structured, populated, and deliberately concealed. Thousands of years later, we built instruments powerful enough to weigh the universe. And they told us the same thing in a different language. 5% seen, 95% hidden. A visible world held in place by an invisible one we still cannot explain. The physicists walked up to the edge of the dark universe and found they had no name for whatever waits on the other side. Enoch, if you believe a single word of it, was taken to that same edge first and came back carrying a description. We are the ones who came after. We are only now catching up to the sheer size of the creation he says he was shown. And the largest question the text leaves us holding is the same one the science leaves us holding. Thousands of years separate the manuscript from the measurement, and the two of them arrive, without ever once meeting, at the exact same great unanswered question. If almost everything that is real is hidden from us, and if it is not empty, then the only thing left to ask is what is inside it, and whether it can see us the way that we so plainly cannot see it.